Hi, my name is Doris Cikopana, and I'm a senior at Emory College, majoring in Spanish and Portuguese and International Studies. I'm also following the pre-medicine track.
Wonderful. I'm Josh Perlin. I am a senior in the College of Arts and Sciences. I'm majoring in psychology and minoring in ethics. So I was working under the mentorship of Dr. Robyn Fivush, who studies narrative meaning making broadly. And specifically, I was examining the relations among narrative redemption, identity formation, and psychological well-being. More particularly, narrative redemption is how people transform negative events into positive outcomes. And I was looking at how individuals were expressing these transformations in terms of who they saw themselves as in the world.
I actually conducted my research abroad in Brazil. So this summer I went to Brazil and under the supervision of Dr. Jeffrey Lesser, I conducted research in the field of public health. The neighborhood which I studied was the neighborhood of Bom Retiro, which is a multicultural, multilingual neighborhood in São Paulo. So I studied specifically the accessibility to health services by patients who do not speak Portuguese as a first language. So I examined and analyzed how these accessibility barriers work in the neighborhood, and then came up with solutions and possible policy outcomes that could lead to better accessibility for patients who do not speak Portuguese as a first language. So I actually studied abroad the summer of 2016, which was the summer after my sophomore year. I studied abroad in São Paulo. Again, it was with Dr. Jeffrey Lesser and Dr. Teixeira, who were both my thesis advisors this year. And I knew I wanted to do something with healthcare and something in Bom Retiro since Dr. Lesser worked there, but I wasn't sure what yet. And then the spring of my junior year, I took a course with Dr. Uriel Kitron and Dr. Jeffrey Lesser. And during that course, I developed this idea for the research. Mm-hmm. And then once I went to Brazil, it developed into the research that it is now.
That's wonderful. That's awesome.
What about you? How did you develop your research?
Actually, interestingly, it wasn't originally through the psych department. What happened was I went on a study abroad program over the summer to Dharamsala, India through the Emory-Tibet partnership. And during that abroad experience, they have one requirement, which is a final project. And the only aspect that you have to include is basically interviews of the monks living on the monastery. And so when I got this assignment, I thought it would be an excellent opportunity just to ask open-ended questions and to elicit these narratives of personal challenge, especially since the Tibetan people were facing a lot of really horrible situations since they had been expelled from their country. And so I collected these narratives and just kind of analyzed what's qualitatively unique about their personal experiences and how it might be socioculturally and religiously informed. And so after hearing some of those narratives, I heard stories of tremendous grief, isolation from families, uncertainty. But in the same narratives, I heard a lot of stories about triumph and intimate connection with loved ones and things along those lines, spiritual striving. And what I learned is that they were relying on a narrative trope called redemption. And so I sought out opportunities to investigate that more thoroughly, and I found out a researcher at Emory was doing that in the psychology department, and that's how I got involved in her research. We're the only two undergraduate fellows who are kind of doing social science research, yes. Which is certainly interesting. I don't know how you felt about being in the humanistic environment that we've been in. I mean, certainly we're dealing with humanistic inquiries and methodologies, but it's definitely pushed me out of my comfort zone in a lot of ways. Just because humanistic scholars think very differently from social science scholars. I mean, it's just... Yes. It's part and parcel of the disciplines. And when I came here and I went to the weekly lunches and I heard about specifically how they were reacting to some of the material that was being presented, I just thought, I would have never thought about it that way. I would have asked different questions.
I think that was one of my favorite parts about being a fellow here at the center. So our weekly lunches, although some of the talks that we witnessed, like I didn't know a lot about these topics before, but learning about them was great, and I only had the opportunity because of this. And definitely agree with you on the fact that some of the responses that were given or some of the questions that were asked during the lunches, I have never thought about them from my perspective, but it was definitely a great experience. I want to attend medical school, but I'm actually taking a gap year right now, so I will probably be working in the field of healthcare. I'm still looking for opportunities, and I hope to be able to combine my interests in different fields such as Spanish and Portuguese and healthcare and international studies. So those are my plans for the future.
Ultimately, I do want to get a PhD in psychology, specifically in social or personality psychology. I'm not really sure long term after that whether or not I want to go into the professoriate, if I want to be a researcher. That I don't want to make a decision about that because that's for a future Josh that I haven't met yet. But I think that being around these older academics ties in nicely with that goal. It's definitely shown me that everybody contributes to the world in their own way. And I think for a long time I tried to force myself to do something, very tangible, right? Do something like social organizing or, forensic psychology, something that could really be applied immediately to the situation. And I think at the end of the day, I don't know the implications long-term of the work that I do, and that everybody has their own passions to contribute. So it's definitely being around older academics who are so passionate about the work that they do. I know that they're positively influencing the world in some regard, and that's all we can really hope for if we've just positively influenced one thing in the world. So it eases my mind a bit to go into academia now, after interacting with them.